Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. We have Aykut today from the University of Amsterdam. Now, it is challenging to read this title. Multimodal communication cannot be iRoNiC, a relevant theoretical account of iRoNiC in the internet. I'm really looking forward to your talk. Okay, so wherever you're ready, Aykut.
All right. Thank you, Ryoko. And hello, everyone, again. I'm really happy to be here and talking to you. I'll be talking about our internet memes in terms of relevance theory and give a short account of them to show them it is possible to express irony through them. So I think Zoom is a bit lagging. Oh, sorry, slide is a bit lagging. Oh, yeah, okay. So today I'll be talking about first contextualizing this internet memes and relevance theory and addressing some challenges in doing that, such as context, the issue of context in digital communication, the issue of audience and how it is treated through imagined audience, the issue of genre, which I think Charles also mentioned in his talk last month. Then I'll talk about the title or the styling in the title with alternating capital letters. I'll discuss irony and two accounts of irony, and then I'll present my analysis of the mocking SpongeBob meme. So let's get started. Context changes a lot from in-person communication to online communication. In-person communication, usually our identities stay consistent across interactions in different settings. And everyone has multiple identities, but these identities carry on from one conversation to the other. So if you're a lecturer in classroom setting, you stay the lecturer unless you become a student, and this carries on. And furthermore, the sentences change meaning depending on time. So, for example, if you say you're early before 6:30 or after 6:30, the message you're trying to get across changes, as well as the sentence Angela broke the record would change meaning in a music store against like compared to a hot dog eating competition. And similarly, it depends on the addressee as well. So for that, I have a video. Let's have a look.
Get out your pens, everybody. It's things you can say to your dog, but not your girlfriend.
What did you just do? What did you just do? Am I going to have to rub your nose in that?
Well, as you can imagine, it's not appropriate to say everything to everyone. And these are all the things one needs to take into account in context in in-person communication. When we carry it online, however, no one knows you're a dog. So what I mean to say by this is that in digital communication, there are a lot of aspects that that stray from the definitions we just give for the in-person communication. So for example, once you post something on the internet, it stays there forever. And it stays as such unless you have means to edit it. But even then, it has a much longer longevity. And what this means is that the same person looking at it today versus 5 years later or 50 years later will have a very different, could have a very different interpretation of the exact same message, even though you didn't change anything in the message itself. The second thing is, we don't know who our recipients are. Obviously, this is also context dependent or like the platform dependent. So if you're talking to someone on WhatsApp, you know who you're addressing in most cases. But if you post on an online forum, like say Reddit, you have no control over who can see the message, barring some settings that platforms allow you to manipulate. Furthermore, in most cases, the recipient also doesn't know who the speaker is. So the internet gives anonymity to both sides, obviously. And there's another issue that is that continuity of messages isn't an obligatory isn't an obligatory feature. So what I mean to say is that they are not necessarily a part of a larger conversation, or if they are, it's not given with the message itself. By the way, the image that I just shared here is actually an image I've seen in Kate Scott's book, and it is by Peter Steiner, and it itself became a meme, so which will become relevant later. So when this happens, when we know that the understanding of context changes in online settings, we realize that many contexts collapse in one. And what I mean by that is people, content, or different social norms persist across different settings. And we know that users have different purposes for using social media in each instance. So Miller has documented various ways in which villagers interpret affordances of Twitter and how they use it in relation to those affordances. So for example, some teenagers say that it is personal, like Twitter is personal and intimate for them, whereas some adults use it as a news source or just to read reviews or complaints about corporate firms. So what the individual sees in the public, what individual looks for in a social media platform determines how they will interpret the message. So this awareness triggers users to either avoid context collapse or adjust their message to it. And there are various strategies to limit context collapse. Davis ran a study in 2010 in users of MySpace, which is a platform that actually I'm not really familiar with, but they discuss how they imagine the access or the context in their post. And what they do is they imagine themselves talking to their partners, their families, or their bosses, and then based on that, they change the content of their message. So all these strategies and all the awareness that context changes on the internet creates a need for defining the audience for us, both as researchers and as people who use internet to communicate. Which brings us to the Marwick and Boyd's the concept coined by Marwick and Boyd in 2011, cognitively constructed audience, or as also called imagined audience. So imagined audience refers to the user's understanding of audience as in their social media platforms, and this also fluctuates. So one study by Litt and Hargitay surveyed American adults, and they found out that in each instance that people use social media, even though they don't change their privacy settings, so they don't block their messages or they don't publicize it to everyone, their notion of audience changes. So sometimes they post it with a larger group in their mind, and sometimes they post it just thinking it is going to be seen by themselves. And this brings us to the fact that when online, we do not necessarily know, or like we do not necessarily have a very explicit idea of who the audience is going to be, but we know the platform, and that helps us shape the message. And I find this a little interesting because in face-to-face communication, usually we use the knowledge we have about the audience to shape our message, but in online communication, we use the knowledge we have about the platform or about the message, and then switch between the platforms to convey our message. And another finding that was reported by Marwick and Boyd is that the notion of audience also depends on our reach. So some people who have larger followings on social media accounts like Twitter or Instagram refer to their audience as fans, whereas people with smaller circles on social media just talk to them as a family or friends, or some people even just use a social media platform as a diary. So how do we navigate all these uncertainties in regards to who we're talking to or who is talking to us? Well, the notion of genre comes to help here, and by genre I mean the version that is cited, that's used by Charles Forceville in his 2020 book, about which he actually talked about, I think, in the last meeting. But here, by activity type, we broaden the notion of genre to events as well. So, for example, imagine going to a doctor. You would know what to expect, what to tell, how the doctor is going to address you, the content of the conversation, even the form of the conversation, or like how the turns are ordered, and this helps you predict what's going to come next, and this helps you in interpretation. And because these activity types repeat itself in both form and content, they create a feedback loop. So this feedback loop both makes sure the notion of genre becomes more solid, and it also gives you a chance to influence it through your actions. Obviously in social settings, like in-person social settings, this is much more difficult. But if you do this in online settings, you could end up with a meme. And this actually happens in the mocking SpongeBob example is one of those. And actually, Koen and his colleagues in Utrecht did run a study on comics to measure genre knowledge of genre in interpretation and anticipation. And they found in the form of an 400 effect that genre knowledge aids anticipation. And the more proficient you are in a genre, in his case, it was comics, American comics, I think, the faster you get in understanding messages. And when we come to internet memes as a genre, Wiggins defines internet memes as a genre of communication. And what it is to say is it's a unique genre of communication which consists of highly customizable templates that can convey a wide range of weak implicatures and attitudes. So obviously, depending on the message, these templates change, but you can still customize even the template itself to convey a message. And to show you how the knowledge of genre can be helpful in interpreting a meme, I actually have two examples here that I want to share. So the first one is called the actual advice mallard. And if you look at the image, in the first upper line, you see use canola oil on your knife before cutting an onion. And in the second line, the text reads, "You won't cry." I don't know if anyone has done this. I haven't. I don't know if it's good advice actually. But if this is has anyone seen this meme before, by the way? I actually don't see the audience, but I think it is no. Okay. It is good because looking at this meme, there is no coherence between the message and the image. It's just a duck, and there's no reason. I can't see any reason why this advice would make sense to be presented together with this one. But let's compare it with this one. Need to dry off your pet after a bath? Microwave. So this is a pretty bad advice. I hope no one ever does it. But when I look at these two memes together, I see that they share everything except for the color of the duck's head and its tail. And the interesting thing is the actual advice mallard. So the meme on the left side of the screen precedes the meme on the right side of the screen. So some user eventually looked at the good advice mallard and said, "Oh, well, if I change this a little bit, I can make it a bad advice and like come up with a different interpretation of it." And apparently this caught off because if you scroll meme websites, you see instances of both and in a consistent fashion. So these memes manage to convey like a wide range of weak implicatures through their original use of images and connections that they make between the image and the text that they accompany. So let's move on to style and why it is important in these especially in digital settings. So Reardon and Croix, I'm not sure if I pronounced their names right, but they have found out that different text styles are used to communicate emotions in computer-mediated communication. So these are, for example, vocal spellings like yes, or lexical spellings, lexical surrogates like or using all capital letters. And they have found out that these uses correspond to certain emotions. Like in the case of yes or vocal spelling, it is to convey an emotion, like intensify the emotion that the word denotes. Or like lexical surrogates replace their real life equivalent in terms of how they are pronounced, especially in non-lexical items. And all capital letters are used to shout online. Harris and Paradise did a study in 2007, and they found out that number of stylistic cues correlates with the intensity of perceived emotion. So the more of these stylistic cues you make use of, the more emotional your audience perceives you. Furthermore, another finding from the same study from Reardon and Croix is that these cues are learned, actually. So users, through exposure, get a knack for them, get an understanding for them, and they start to use it themselves. And I have seen a relatively new use, which is very crucial for this study, and that is the alternating capital letters. So before I go on to discuss alternating capital letters, I want to ask the audience, like, have you seen the use of ACL in your online or like in person communications with on digital platforms, or is this something you're just seeing in the context of this research?
I've seen it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we have. Excuse me?
I've seen that too.
Okay, great. So we have a good variety of audience here. So for the ones who haven't seen it, I want you to take a look at this Reddit screenshot and imagine what it could mean for a second. And then I'm going to show you the content of one of these posts. Oh, I also see that someone texted in the chat that they have seen it as well. All right. So, but as you can see in the video, obviously and thankfully, a kitten is not getting eaten alive. So there is an obvious contrast between the content of the message and the video that accompanies it. So this is going to become more important, especially when we discuss its iRoNiC use in SpongeBob meme. But I will come back to it after I discuss iRoNiC. Oh, I have a little problem with the slide. Okay, so before I discuss that, I want to talk about the literature on alternating capital letters. First of all, I couldn't find much on it, and I would be really happy to read more on it if any one of you know about it. But the only thing I found is that it is hard to read and process. And this was a study on, these studies that I cited are studies done on reading stylistic cues, and they don't treat ACL, like the use of ACL, from a semantics or pragmatics perspective. And the other study I found was a master's thesis from a Croatian university, which does include ACL, but it doesn't treat ACL. So it just discusses it in passing, and it's a thesis on sarcasm, but I didn't include it because it just had a few lines on it without any explanation. So I hope to offer an explanation after I discuss iRoNiC. Wilson and Sperber discuss three features of irony. The first one is the normative bias. So imagine you're making your coffee in the morning, and instead of pouring hot water in your French press, you pour it in the coffee bag that you have, and then you say great. Well, the ironic use here is that like it is used in a situation that defy normative expectations. So you would rarely do it in the opposite sense. So imagine you finish your coffee, it's a perfect coffee, and you're really happy with it. You're not likely to say it's well, what a terrible coffee. This is not like, this only happens, according to them, this only happens in cases where it's very marginal and defined such that the normative expectation is that the coffee is always terrible and somehow you end up making good coffee. Another feature that they define is that irony conveys an attitude rather than the informational content in a proposition. And they also cite a few studies, one of which is the Rockwell study in 2000, that irony, especially in the case of sarcasm, is usually accompanied by some speech features like flat or deadpan intonation, slower tempo, and a lower pitch level. So before I move on further, I want to take back to the ACL discussion. So if you see the title here, I think ACL accompanies irony use for the following reasons. The first one is that ACL is an ironic take on the spelling conventions. So like regular spelling is very predictable. You know when letters are supposed to be in capital. You know when letters are supposed to be in minor form, but ACL doesn't do that. It is an ironic take on spelling conventions. And let's move on with the discussion of irony, and then I will elaborate further why ACL fits better with the echoic account rather than the pretense account. So by echoic account, Wilson and Sperber mentioned one critical feature, and it is that its irony is an attributive use of language in which the speaker's primary intention is not to provide information about the content of an attributed thought, but to convey her own attitude or reaction to that thought. So similar to what I've just said about irony earlier, they mentioned two important things. It is an attributive use that conveys an attitude or reaction to a thought. And as such, it is dissociative. Irony is rarely, or if not at all, used to support an idea or be affirming. And furthermore, irony is a remark on inappropriateness of a thought. So this is very important because this is the central feature that separates irony from echoic account from the pretense account. Because pretense account that is created by Clark and Gerich say that the speaker pretends to be someone else when they're entertaining the proposition in their utterance. And in this case, the speech act is not attributive like the echoic account suggests, but it is performative. And the speech act, by being performative, acts a person, real or hypothetical, mocks a person that would actually unironically utter the sentence, intending the literal meaning. So this is the main difference. So echoic account is a take on the inappropriateness of a thought, whereas the pretense account is a take on inappropriateness of a person's act of saying such a sentence. I see a message in the chat. Is that a... Oh, okay. I thought that was a question. Well, before we move on to the analysis of mocking SpongeBob in these terms, I want to take a summary of what we have just discussed and contextualize it in the case of relevance theory. So, first of all, again, all right, sorry about that. First of all, in digital communication, context is understood differently compared to in real life communication. And for relevance theory, we can talk about it in terms of like the mutual environment being carried to a digital space and the speakers or internet users constructing a different sort of mutual environment with their audience. And about this audience, users are not clueless. They know the limitations of the platform, and they know the limitations of the type of communication that takes place online. So that means they have the means to to come up with sentences that are optimal for their purposes, and that's how they using this knowledge they can assure that they are optimally relevant. Furthermore, iRoNiC is better explained via the echoic account, and this classifies it as an attributive use of language, which will be more relevant in the discussion of a mocking SpongeBob meme. And the knowledge of genre creates a feedback loop, and it can be learned. What I mean by here is that when you see a message for the first time in an online platform, especially in the case of memes, if you're not familiar with it, your chances of recognizing and fulfilling the intentions, informative and communicative intentions, will depend on your lack of knowledge or your knowledge of the meme or the genre. And memes are a customizable genre of communication, customizable templates for communication, which helps internet users to convey a wide range of weak implicatures and attitudes online. So let's talk about SpongeBob. I guess everyone has at least seen once the character. This is him in his regular, usual form, and this is SpongeBob in the meme form. This meme is relatively new. It's younger than 10 years, I think. And in knowyourmeme.com, there is an account of it. The first instance of this meme is from Twitter. It is accompanied by one line of text, which is in the body of the Twitter message, and it says, "How I stare back at little kids when they stare for too long," making literal use of the image depicted in the meme. Remember, this is the very first use. The second use is it consists of another image and two lines of text here. The first one is BF, probably boyfriend, in quotation marks. I don't even know her like that. And the second one is the respawn of the poster, repeating the same phrase, this time bringing it a little bit of a mocking attitude through the use of ACL. The third post is this time again it follows the same format minus the image of the bird, and it is a commentary, let's say, on the healthcare debate in the U.S. Where they mock Republicans by saying, like, by repeating the quote in where Republicans are mocking the Democrats by quoting them in this way. So after this, the meme gets caught on by the internet community and gets repeated over and over again. And I'm going to present a couple of uses of it, but I want to discuss why this meme is useful to convey irony. But before I do that, I want to say one thing. Obviously, there will be many examples of this meme not incorporating ACL. This is not an exhaustive account, and these are just samples that fit with the echoic account of iRoNiC, and you can always find memes that differ from this template that do not use ACL. This actually, I don't think this would hurt the case because it's a feature, it's not a bug, let's say. So there are a few things that repeat itself within the meme. The first one being the eyes. The eye shape and the eye position is constant across these memes. The second one is the mouth, and the third one is the posture, and in particular the position and shape of legs and the arms. So what is important here is that SpongeBob is presented in this meme in a dissociated way from who he usually is in the cartoon. So there's already a layer of dissociation happening in the image level without introducing the text. And the use of ACL further further amplifies the dissociation and makes a case for the message to be placed further from its literal meaning. And so there's a question that arises here, and that is, when we see a meme with SpongeBob, with this meme, who is speaking? Could it be SpongeBob himself? Well, I find it very unlikely because, first of all, we do not see SpongeBob saying these sentences usually, like, or the ones I'm about to cite in the cartoon, or like imagine the healthcare debate in the US. I don't know if SpongeBob makes a comment on that. So could it be the person they're quoting? I also find it unlikely because there is no clue for reference assignment here. It's usually like this meme isn't, especially in the cases that I used, there is no reference assignment for the possible person who's being quoted. So in this case, what remains is that it is the person who's posting the meme. And I mentioned that this meme is highly customizable, so I'm going to show you a couple of versions that are customized. So here you see a wig, a very popular wig, I would say, attached to it, and another image keeps the features that I mentioned about the eyes, about the mouth, and the posture constant while applying them to former US President Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is not the only political person that is affected by these memes. It's also Angela Merkel. In this case, she's portrayed within actually the cartoon. So now, before showing you the samples that I've analyzed, I want to create a typology of this meme that fits within the context of iRoNiC. So we have discussed the context quite a lot, and in these memes, we're going to see sometimes the context is given to the audience, and sometimes it is left unobvious for the audience to infer through their access of world knowledge. And obviously, the codes should belong to either a real person or a hypothetical person. And there is a sample. I could manage to find a sample for each one of these use cases. And here they are. So now I'm going to discuss a little bit why of how they managed to convey iRoNiC. So the first example is a real person in an inferred context. Here you see the meme with one line of text, and it is, "I won the election by a lot." Does anyone have any guesses on who this person could be? I would love to hear it, actually.
Trump.
Yeah, correct. Somehow it is very reminiscent of him, and he actually did tweet this. So in this meme, we don't see any clues as to who could have said it, but we do see that it is a statement that the poster is trying to dissociate themselves from. And if you actually go to the original post, you can see that it is posted on the same day as the tweet. I don't know if you can read it, but on the left-hand side on the screenshot from 9gag, it says 7th of November 2020, and on the right side you see the tweet is also dated the same day. And I can imagine some of you thinking, well, you can also see the title right above it. Doesn't that give you the context? So how can you say that the context is inferred here by the audience? Well, I showed you the meme without talking about Trump, and you could deduce that. So this is important because this is just one platform that it was posted on. There's a huge chance that this meme was copied and sent to a lot of people through WhatsApp or other social media boards, or even in this case, you could access the original owner of the code without having to actually seeing the title. This dissociation is an ironic take on how Trump views the elections. So my next sample is from a hypothetical person in an inferred context, and it concerns the COVID debate. So just got my microchip, love my 5G reception. So this is actually a conspiracy theory that became popular after research done in Delft University, where they managed to insert a thermometer below the skin using a needle, and this was a digital chip. And people started thinking that there was a whole conspiracy that Bill Gates was trying to chip everyone through these needles. And again, we do not see who says this. We do not see when this is said, but like knowing the debate regarding COVID and conspiracy theory gives access to this. And remembering that like the use of ACL is again dissociative from the code. You can see that the mocking attitude towards the thought, even though you do not know exactly who is saying this. So another example is the other example I have regarding a real person in a given context is a bit more tricky because it comes from Twitter, and I think it's an earlier example of this meme. But here it is important to think of one thing, like who is the audience? So this Twitter or the user, let's say, tweets that this conversation between themselves and a person named him, or like person referred to as him, which is probably a romantic partner. And here there are a couple of things that I want to draw your attention towards. The first one is the text placement. This has to do with the Twitter's affordances and constraints. It is much less effortful to place a text before an image. So this is the preferred way that I think this is the preferred way of the user to present the text, as in the previous examples, we saw that the text embedded in the image. I think it has to do with how easy it is to do that. And the second thing I want you to notice is the allusion to WhatsApp. In the first line, the text says, "Leaves me undelivered last night," which is a functionality, which is a comment on functionality in WhatsApp that lets you know if a recipient has read your message or has not read it yet. And this person is complaining that, or like mentioning that their probably romantic partner didn't answer their last message. And in the following morning, they just said, "Good morning, beautiful." And this time, please notice the difference between the first line and the second line. The first line is doesn't use quotation marks; it uses asterisks to introduce the context, whereas the second line further introduces the context by denoting the action taken by he, in this case, quoting him. "Good morning, beautiful." And the reply given by the speaker is the mocking attitude of SpongeBob repeating it. I think the typo here in their message is just a mistake, so I don't know really how to read into that. So the last example I have to give is a hypothetical person in a given context. Again, this time the context is actually embedded in the image as a line of text. This title is from a newspaper, and it is used to describe a school shooting in Florida in the United States in 2018. This is a commentary on the gun ownership debate, and I think the poster is distancing them from the people who would say something like, "Well, nobody needs a gun, just call the police and they would help you out in such a situation." And apparently in this case, calling the police, they don't find calling the police as a helpful solution to the the event that has occurred in the US. So to wrap it up, irony fits better as an attributive and echoic use of language, and it is also a coherent interpretation with internet memes. Like, it is supported by internet memes in this account. And secondly, the use of alternating capital letters aid the communication of irony and sarcasm in text. And finally, the text plus image combinations can be used ironically. And I have a couple of questions on what comes next after this. And that is, one thing concerns our internet memes in general, and it is what exactly is an internet meme? Because we have seen the template being manipulated in different ways, but at which point do we start recognizing something as an internet meme? Were the eyes by themselves enough as an internet meme, or do we have to see the entire image, or do we have to see it with an image and the text that accompanies it? So that's something I'm curious about. And the second thing is, what is sufficient to convey irony in multimodal settings? So is ACL alone, or does it have to be accompanied by something that contradicts the propositional content in the message? So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for bearing with me, and I would love to discuss further with you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Aykut. It was very, very interesting. And I think we have a lot of questions and comments, and your examples were fun. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay. Does anyone, oh, there's already hands up. Mariana?
Yes, hi everyone. Sorry for being late, first of all, and thank you for this presentation. I wanted to ask how you draw the line between irony and parody, especially when you deal with memes that use like so much body language, facial expressions. The lines become a bit blurry, and I think that for irony to still be irony, it needs to stay tacit, implicit, and not.
It is supposed to stay
tacit, implicit, like not advertise itself. So when we're using memes, the lines start becoming a bit blurry. So irony kind of merges with parody and impersonation. So I wanted to ask, have you tried to draw a line between these two and like make a...
Yeah, I did think about it, because my initial concern with this choosing this meme was that it could as well just be mocking or pretending to be someone. But upon thinking about it, I like if you know already this meme, or like if like the context that I've just presented it are super varied, like they vary. So I find it hard to say that it is a parody of a lot of things at the same time. It can be a representation of a parody, but I find it a more distant account than just the one I just presented, because as like parody has this feature of repeating something in a ridiculous way, let's say, but using the very same method to repeat all of these codes, all of these people, sound to me more difficult to back up than saying that it is just a commentary on how ridiculous what they're saying is. So that was my take on the issue.
Right. I mean, have you tried to spell it out in a way? I'm asking because I'm also working on irony, and I'm thinking of introducing in my research memes or emojis to play with facial expressions, and it's something I'm currently thinking of how I'm going to draw a line. So did you make specific references as to what you consider to be irony and what you consider to be a personification?
Yeah.
Or
I mean, yeah, you have like different sorts of irony, right? So I think like because I'm not differentiating between those types, I didn't really look into that because I just wanted to see if you can convey irony in any form. If you were to make a case on like it being a situational irony or a verbal irony, then it would have to be discussed, but I didn't really look into that.
Great. Okay. I think that was all. And before I give my place to somebody else, do you think we can access your slides in a way, or your reference list?
I can, yeah, I can definitely like for the presentation, or you want it for the paper? I can share both with you if you just send me an email.
Yeah, it would be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Hey, do we have any other questions or comments? And just because we are recording this presentation, it will be uploaded onto our website as well. Okay. So, Brandis?
Yes, I really like the talk. I have a question. It's a common question, sort of, you know, type. So part of the multimodal context that you seem to be examining is images, for example, images of politicians and everything, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What we saw basically was not the real Donald Trump in the right proportionate, you know, in his his body was not in the right ordinary proportions. It was what we call a caricature. So the face, for example, the whole size was blown out of proportion. It was distorted, a distorted image of Donald Trump or Angela Merkel and everything. So I was wondering if caricatures have a role to play in your account of irony and the multimodal kind of setting, because it wasn't the real thing. It was something else, what we saw.
I didn't take caricatures into account, but I do think like memes follow from caricatures, because you see in internet memes a lot of times these sort of images. Like I mean, you also have the same for like not just for politicians, but in for football players, for like pop culture icons. They are depicted. I mean, sometimes they are the meme itself, right? I can't think an example off the top of my head right now, but you also see these icons as the meme itself. So I do think there is a continuity between caricatures and memes, but this account doesn't necessarily take caricatures in consideration when explaining irony in memes. Because like you also have in caricatures, like they're usually situated in a, like, let's say in a newspaper or a journal. Like their context is much more different than a meme. You can see a meme in isolation, whereas caricatures are less likely to be seen in that context. I mean, now it is more possible because we have internet, so I can just send a caricature to someone, but I don't think, especially when they were prevalent, that this was the case. So I wouldn't feel comfortable like applying the same sort of thinking to caricatures as we do on memes.
Yes, I was just under the impression that perhaps caricatures turn this whole discussion into a discussion about jokes rather than irony. So it's sort of you know, I'm not really sure that we have irony here. I mean, it's laughable. I laughed. I mean, it was a joke, but I'm not really sure that I got the irony. You know, I'm still working on it, of course. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with your account.
No, it is likely also that there's a mistake. I wouldn't rule that out, because the nature of memes are so, I would say, ineffable, due to like how context dependent they are, like how unique they are in each instance, you know. So if you don't get the irony, or like if you don't see the irony, I think it is or immediately, let's say, I think it is a very valid take on it.
Well, thank you very much.
So do we have any other? Kate, you have to unmute yourself.
Charles has put his hand up, so
Okay,
let him go
Charles.
first.
Charles, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Aykut. I enjoyed this, even though I had seen some of it before. A few comments. You say, is ACL enough for to indicate irony? Well, I remember from discussions in linguistics and pragmatics that some people have said, well, perhaps we should introduce an irony symbol. And I think that within the context of memes, the ACL has become a coded symbol to cue irony. And I can imagine that at one stage it might even go beyond memes and enter other genres. So yeah, I think it may gradually become sufficient for irony, because it becomes an irony signal. Another thing is, I'm particularly interested in what you mentioned too, how much of the visual is needed to recognize the original, the SpongeBob, and in the SpongeBob you gave an example of that, because that is crucial. There is a kind of minimum which may differ actually according to who the audience is, because people who are very familiar with memes may need less visual information to recognize the original meme than people that are not so familiar with it. So I find that very interesting, because it is also, for me, an element of coded visuals. And as you know, if you know my work, I'm very much interested in saying whatever can be said about coded visual elements. So I find that crucial. And to come back to the previous comment, whether the Trump and the Merkel are not just parodies or caricatures, I mean, surely any meme needs a textual component. Isn't that right, Aykut?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, the difficulty I have with answering this question is also something I try to address in the talk itself. Like, whatever you post as a meme becomes the meme, and whatever people take from it will carry on. So I did analyze the examples that have text, especially text in ACL, because that's what was relevant for my research. But if you post just the image and then say, this is the meme, like at the moment, especially like in the literature, to my knowledge, there isn't a base to say, okay, this is not a meme. It becomes a meme when it catches on. And I think like Kate would also might have something to say on this here, but this is my take on it. So I really find it difficult to say what is a meme. Hence the question here: what is a meme? Like, how is it stored in the mind?
Just one more thing, but in that case, I would agree, I think, with Valandis that the Merkel and Trump one are caricatures and they are not ironical.
Yes, but the images there also weren't those images weren't presented with any text to make them ironical. Like in itself, okay, yes, they are caricatures because they just represent them in a very ridiculous posture with unproportional features. So in that case, yes, of course. But I think like the textual element there, especially if you're going to talk irony or a comedy, like it is important to have the textual elements as well.
Okay, thanks.
And on your comment about ACL being alone on its own, I would say from personal experience, it depends on who you're asking. Because if I ask it to, like, if I send something to my friends as a text message and type it in ACL, I think the university students now or the younger generations will interpret it in a different way than my grandfather would. So at the time, I think the answer to that question depends on who you're asking, and this in research, like in academic terms, I think would translate to how familiar you are with ACL. How many times have you seen ACL?
Of course. So we now come back to the good old and very important notion of the cognitive environment in relevance theory. You have to have that knowledge stored in your cognitive environment in order to recognize it. And if you do not, and that is, it is a coded form. So if you don't know the code, you will not realize that it is an irony sign. So indeed, you're completely right. It depends on who you ask, because only people who have that knowledge in their cognitive environment will be able to use it. But I would imagine that if it's going to be used more and more and more people will gradually begin to recognize that because they know the code.
Exactly. And I mean, in this case, I would also give the same answer for your second comment. What is sufficient for a meme to be recognized as such? If you ask me and like just show me, I don't know, 10 pixels of the meme that I just presented, I would recognize it as such, because I've been working on it like this entire year. You know it better than everyone else here. So I could recognize it as such, but I don't know if this is the first time you're saying, at which point you'll be like, oh, like this is that that weird SpongeBob, you know? So again, the answer is the same. How familiar are you with it? And it makes studying this a lot more difficult, especially if you present it to, or if you discuss it with someone who has never seen it, because first they need to absorb the meme to like, or seen it in enough context to contextualize all your arguments. And that's why I also say, like, when Valandis wasn't sure entirely whether this is irony or not, that is a perfectly valid take. But I don't want to see it as a proof either, because that's just how would I say, a close proof that I basically say, like, if you see it enough, like, you're gonna believe it. I don't want it to like become a religious thought, you know. So yeah, that's why I wanted to present it to you guys, because I felt like I had a lot to learn from you.
Okay, so I think because we started a little bit late, I think Kate had her hand up. If you could, you have like a minute or two.
Yeah, I have like a million different things I could I could probably say. So a couple of just thoughts. The first question you had there for your follow-on questions about how's it stored in the mind, and it seemed to me that is a question of like how far can it be altered from the original to sort of still count as part of that meme set. I referred to them as like meme sets and then individual memes within that meme set. And I think maybe you might want to have a look at the idea of resemblance, and Riapo knows more about resemblance than I do, because it seems to be, as long as there's, as other speakers have said, depending on how well you know the image, you can stretch the resemblance further away from it, but there has to be a certain amount of resemblance. So I've done some analysis on the distracted boyfriend meme, which is the guy looking over his shoulder at another woman walking by, and you know that there's lots of canonical versions of that, but then you get it played out with Star Wars figures or you know, Lego people or whatever, and as long as they're in the same orientation on the page, then they can, and they've still got certain features. So I think resemblance would be something to look into there, perhaps.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on.
No, actually, I've written a PhD proposal on this and presented it in the Netherlands. It unfortunately didn't get chosen, but I had a plan to run EEG studies, and if I could get the funding, like eventually maybe fMRI studies to see like how memes interact with your brain, to explain it, because I think like this is not like, I feel like especially around the conversation around memes, the empirical studies are lacking, and I wanted to contribute that, and I think there's a huge potential there, but I couldn't convince the Dutch authorities, so I don't know. Maybe
it would definitely be interesting to do some empirical stuff on how far you can take it, how long it takes people to recognize it as a member of that meme set and so on. I think there's a lot with the ACL, I think there's definitely something around processing effort there, right, and expectations. So maybe it becomes coded after a while to as a cue to irony, but there's something about the fact that it's an unexpected typographical pattern, right? We're expecting maybe the first letter to be capitalized and the rest to be lowercase, and when we start playing around with that, we're putting the reader to more effort, and so they're going to expect some added meaning to come from that. So there's something around processing effort leading to extra effects around and I've written around typography elsewhere. I think there's something there's obviously something there, but then it becomes associated with one particular interpretation, in this case, the iRoNiC one. And then I'm just saying this really quickly because I know we're running a bit tight of time. And then your other question, is ACL alone sufficient for iRoNiC? I agree with Charles that there's definitely it's a cue for it, but I don't think it's even necessary. Is that you could take that away and just have it written there, and some readers would still get that it's an iRoNiC repetition of the first one. It depends on the context and how rich the context is. So I think it's probably a cue so that more people to avoid the chances of misunderstanding. But is it sufficient? I don't even think it's necessary. It's just a cue, just like some discourse connectives might guide you to a certain interpretation, but you can take them out. The interpretation would still be there if the context is rich enough. So I think there's something sort of, I don't want to say procedural, but there's something cueing the inference there.
I would say like it will support your comment on context, but if you haven't, like, especially anonymous context where you don't know who's posting, you wouldn't know if they actually agree with that text or not, just based on what is written there, right?
Possibly, but you might also infer just by the fact that they've even written it, then that they intend it ironically. Otherwise, why are they just repeating it? So I'm not saying it would work in every context, but then, and that may be why this kind of cue has developed to encourage that inference, but it's not necessary in a rich enough context. I think Mariana wanted to comment.
Yeah, sorry for jumping in. Also in written contexts like this, people usually use quotes when they are being ironic.
They can do, and sometimes when they're speaking, they might do that as well, but they also might not. So there are lots of examples of irony in written language where there's no cue to it other than that. And then also the last thing I was saying, which you just reminded me of, was I agree there might be something going on where some of these maybe some of them are irony, but some of them might not. They might be banter or jokes. And it's worth looking, if you haven't before, looking at Deirdre Wilson's paper, Irony, Hyperbole, Jokes and Banter, because she picks apart the sometimes very subtle difference between some of those things. And I think there's a video of her giving a lecture of it online as well, which is really useful. So if you haven't looked at that before, I'd recommend that for really pulling apart which of them are ironic and which of them are maybe just banter. Anyway, I've said enough. Mini lecture.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. So because we are out of time, we have to stop here, but it was really, really interesting. So thanks again for the speaker tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we look forward to reading your article and everything. Next time, next session will be on the 20th of December, rather than 27th, because that's a little bit too...
It's an early Christmas present, isn't it, for everybody?
So we're going to have early Christmas present from Brandis with his talk. It sounds really interesting as well. Critical thinking and adventure games. We're really looking forward to that. So, okay, thanks
So am I.
today, and see you in 3 weeks' time. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.